And we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Isolation Central. This is our eighth episode, and I think the ninth or tenth day for self isolation for most of us. We went into lockdown last Friday. So today we are back on a very important topic. We are going to discuss mental health, protecting your mental health, and how to survive this social isolation. And for that, we have an amazing person with us to talk us through that. I would like to welcome and thank Miss Lisa Cherry for joining us today in our show. Thank you.
Hello, it's lovely to be here, Hammad. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much. Lisa is an author. She has been working. She's an educator. She is a mental health professional. I'm sure we can learn a lot from her. So first of all, I would like to ask you the question, the burning question: how are you keeping yourself sane during all of this?
Yeah, and that is a really good question, Hammad, because when we notice and understand our own processes and the way that we manage ourselves, it helps us be more kind to ourselves in the way that we're doing that. And when we're kinder to ourselves, it helps us be kinder to other people. So the process for me, I've done 3 weeks now at home. And one of those weeks has been completely alone with just my dog because my partner has gone into his workspace and he's moved into his workspace because of the work that he does. He's on the front line. So that's been really interesting to be completely alone for a week. Previously to being on lockdown, I'm not sure I like the phrase lockdown, but previously to being on lockdown, I was, my work is about traveling the country, traveling to other countries, as you know, because I've been to Pakistan several times to work, meeting hundreds of people every week and working with, sometimes hundreds of people each week. To go to a place of just being in my house, predominantly alone, has been challenging. And the things that I've really noticed within myself have been, I've been quite sometimes lethargic. I've noticed that I've been quite dissociated. I'm not sure how that would translate in Urdu, but that kind of feeling of not being present. I felt like I'm not quite present. We've struggled to get food sometimes here because people were stockpiling. So I had some anxious feelings about how I was going to feed myself. I've basically, through observing those things that have been going on for me, that's helped me to develop my own kind of care plan. And I guess that's what we're looking at today, really, isn't it? How do we develop our own kind of care plan? Because I don't know about Pakistan, but certainly in the UK, we are potentially looking at 3 to 6 months of living like this. Now, that feels quite frightening to say it like that, which leads me into one of the first things that people really need to do, which is to take this stuff a day at a time, sometimes an hour at a time. And we're having a special hour for you because you are getting something from doing this. And you'll know that I do my morning 21 days of self-care videos for the same reason. It's a routine. It helps me stay focused. So hopefully I can give lots of tips as we go through, but I think that one day at a time is really important because we don't know how long this is going to go on for. And that creates feelings of anxiousness and uncertainty. Yeah.
Like you're very right, because this is the common factor that I've been, hearing from different people. Because that's one thing that you are confined to one space. You are stuck at home, or at work, or at one place. But the uncertainty and the fear, when these two combine together, okay, we have a problem, we have an epidemic going on, but we don't know when it will end, and how it will end, and if it will end to start with. So I think we should. This is a very good starting point, that how to go about it. That one day to day routine, or even 1 hour to hour routine, when everything seems so gloomy, everything seems hopeless. You think about it that there is no point to anything. How do you tackle that feeling?
Yeah, I mean, that's a deep, dark place, Hammad. I mean, that's not a place where anybody wants to spend too long. But I would say that um, that kindness and compassion that I was just talking about a moment ago is that different people have different ways of processing these really difficult feelings, and we need to be kind about that. So some people might have those feelings and become very depressed, and they might go to bed and not get up. Other people might be very angry. Other people might decide to be really positive, and that is, it can be really difficult to be around if you're not in that space. And I think that's really important, that people will deal with this very differently. But there are things that you can do, because if you stay in that mindset and you stay in that cognitive part of yourself, then that is going to spiral quite quickly if you don't have tools to help you come back into your body, and for you to think about what are the things that I can have control over. Because the truth of the matter is that it's really a human desire to think we have control over something. So this idea that we have lost control, as if we had it, is fascinating. But of course, we have this deep desire to think that we've got control, we've got this, we know exactly what's going to happen. And actually, that's not the case ever. But this brings that feeling to the fore of powerlessness and loss of control. So then we have to think about, well, what do I have control over? So you're demonstrating, have control over setting up this hour where you shut the door, and this is a boundary that you are not going to let compromise, because you know that your mental health is depending upon having this hour. So there's your boundary for a start off. So you have some control there. Other things that you might have control over might be whether you have a shower every morning, whether you make sure that you make time to FaceTime somebody that's really important to you. Or it might be that you FaceTime someone that you're connected with on social media, but you've never met them, so you reach out. Or it might be that you have control about how much food you're going to eat, because let's face it, food's going to get very complicated. Either there's too much of it or there's not enough of it. There's feeding your feelings. And I do always joke when I come to Pakistan, wherever you go, everyone wants to feed you food. So how are you all coping with that? I don't know. It might be that you decide you're going to have control over moving your body. And moving your body is going to be key to this. Because, again, having visited Pakistan, it's not set up very well in the areas I've been for moving your body anyway. You have some parks you can go to, but predominantly finding places to move your body is a challenge in Pakistan anyway. So it's thinking about how are you going to have control over moving your body. There are fantastic apps that you can download where you can do 10 minutes of body movements a day that keep your body moving. Because if you're not moving your body, and you've got that mindset that you described of complete and utter gloom, that's going to be very, very difficult to shift.
Okay. Uh, yeah. So basically, again, I think this is a question that comes up often, and that's I might be repeating myself, but the point remains, how to reach that point where you start doing it. Right now, for example, if I am laying in my bed all day doing nothing, how do I get to that point where I start doing these things, I take that decision, and then go from there?
Well, it might be really hard for you to do that, but if you're not alone in your house, then that's the kind of thing that you're going to be hoping someone is going to do with you, for you, remind you, hey, you haven't got up all day. Can I help you to get up today? Can we get up today just for 10 minutes? You know, I'd really like it if you helped me with, is it possible that we could do this exercise together? Would you like to cook with me? You know, because sometimes we don't have it within us to do that.
True.
And part of this gift of what's happening is that our relationships are going to push us to the brink, right? Now, they're either going to do that and we're going to come out the other end stronger and richer and with more love for each other because we helped each other, or we're going to come out the other end and we're going to have some work to do. And those are the things we have control over, and we need to make choices about. What do I want my relationship to look like when this is over?
Okay, so that takes me to my another question. We are talking about the two extremes. One extreme is something that we all would like, coming out of it in a positive, loving, closer manner. But the other extreme sounds a bit scary and it's a bit disturbing as well. And in some houses, I personally know that there's a toxic environment. So a lot of kids, I say kids who are like in their early 20s, they go out of their houses to look peace, to find peace. They look for contentment outside their home, but now they are stuck in that place they were running away from. So it's a toxic environment for them. So what are some of the practical steps that they can do? Because as we were discussing earlier as well, social boundaries, especially within a house and family, are something not very well understood in Pakistan. So if you ask
Yeah.
for it, then you might be signaled that you are creating trouble, you are the troublemaker. It's something that's you are the problem. So keeping that in mind, how to survive a toxic environment.
Yeah, I mean, hey, that's a really difficult question. I was thinking about this before I came on because there are different cultural norms, different cultural ways of doing things, of being, that make some of the things that I might say to somebody in the UK or in the West, if you like, quite difficult to say in the context of Pakistan. But what I might be, you see, is there are many people who we've got to be very concerned about. We've got people who are in toxic relationships, toxic family environments. We've got prisoners in prisons where we know that the virus is potentially just going to run wild. That's going to implode. We've got people in domestic violence situations. We've got children who will have nowhere to go. And the structures, the infrastructure, we know, we've had this conversation so many times, is just not there to protect children or to protect women or men from domestic violence. So there are some real challenges there. I mean, the kind of normal things that I would be saying to somebody, and I am going to, on my own podcast, I'm going to have a conversation with somebody regarding safety at this level, would be things like that don't normally, kind of apply always over there, would be things like having a plan of escape. Having your pack somewhere with keys and overnight stuff in if you have to flee, those kind of things. Having working out how to set some of those boundaries. I mean, that's a really difficult concept culturally. That is something we've spoken about a lot, that and I often use the example of when I am offered food and I say no thank you, I'm offered food then 6, 7, 8 more times, and if I wasn't able to hold that boundary, I would eat the food, and that would happen to me maybe 7 times a day, and I'd be very, very large. So boundaries aren't just the things that we set for ourselves, but they're actually, how do you hold that boundary when you're under pressure? Certainly around the toxicity, I mean, I don't think there are any easy answers to that. I think that's potentially quite a scary time. and thinking about boundaries and thinking about how you find the things that you do have control over are going to be your go-tos. I mean, there's only really one place that you can go in a situation like this, and that's within.
Hmm.
You know, you can only go within and, you know, speak to your God, your higher power, your universe, your life force, whatever it is, to have guidance, because this is potentially a really difficult time, and some people are not going to fare brilliantly out of this situation. And you know, we've spoken also about some of the particular challenges for people living in the much poorer communities in the villages, where even the basic idea of having water and soap and sanitizer is not available.
True.
You know, it's even that isn't a level playing field, is it?
Yeah. Uh, I was just talking about it yesterday that, we are still blessed to be sitting in our houses and, just worrying about the virus. There are people out there who are financially, challenged. They have to survive on day-to-day basis, and they are out of work. They can't seem to find a financial solution and, economic problems. So it's definitely not a level playing field, and it's something that is very scary. Uh, Follow up to that earlier discussion, uh, at the same time where I was talking about toxic environment, if you talk about the other side of it, that's, we are worrying about our parents. We are very worried about our children. So
Of course.
that is also that turns into an OCD at times. That, I have to keep my parents safe. I have to keep my children uh, safe, and there's a constant fear that if God forbid any one of them gets affected, it would be because of me. It was my mistake. I should have been more careful. So, I would like you to address. This is one of the questions that I got earlier, so I would like your comment on that as well, for the constant fear for the safety of our parents and loved ones.
Yeah. And I mean, that is, again, that's a very particular circumstance to the way that you live in Pakistan, which is that people live together. So the idea that you wouldn't see your parents, which is what we would have here. So I can't see my children. You can only be with the people you live with. That's how they've dressed that up. And for you, that means living potentially with 3, sometimes 4 generations. And, you know, that must be absolutely terrifying. And if you're somebody who already is quite obsessive, this is going to draw out some more kind of obsessive behaviors that might feel as if they are giving control when in fact they might not feel very in control. But, you know, at the end of the day, there's not an answer to that, Hammad. You know, I mean, I can't sit here and have lots of answers. And I guess that's the thing, isn't it? We've all got to be very comfortable
Yeah, yeah.
with not knowing things
Mm.
and not having the answers to things. And that's something I can't imagine what the answer is to that, other than everybody in the household taking responsibility for their own well-being, their own mental health and well-being, with the things that, you know, we'll talk about are things that need to be done. And if most people are able to manage their state of mind and their well-being to the best that you can in the circumstances, then you're going to have better outcomes than if everybody is all over the place, not taking responsibility, blaming you because you did this and you because you did that, when actually it's about thinking, what can I do that's going to hold this situation well? And you just have to hope that everybody else is doing the same.
Exactly. I totally agree with that. So before we move forward, we have a comment. Basically, we have a question. So Tuba is basically asking that, the last week has been full of distress and anxiety, because we are facing a reality that this would be the new normal for an uncertain period of time. So especially these circumstances are unprecedented for our generation. And so how do you cope up with this? How do we engage ourselves, and come on, come on term with the new normal that we are potentially looking at?
Yeah, well, we're all kind of learning on the job, aren't we? And we're actually learning as a world,
Yeah.
and that's something very unique. This is impacting upon us all, and there's something about that brings us all together, and how we're all learning together to make sense of something. And we've seen from some of our leadership in different countries where we've had to watch them go on a journey. We've had to watch them go, no, there's no problem, everything's fine, to that's it, we're quarantining everything. So we're all on a journey with this, and some people are going to have, we're all going to have had different starting points. So I think the first tweet that I did about COVID-19 was, we have just woken up to a new normal. And that is absolutely what has happened, and that's going to take time to adapt. And today is the first day that I'm feeling like I can run with this, providing I stay in the mentality of a day at a time, rather than that feeling of, how am I going to do this? I can't run with this. And when we change a habit, it takes normally about 3 weeks. It's normally like 21 days, which is why you see lots of things going 21 days to do this, 21 days to do that. So it makes sense to me that it's going to take about 3 weeks just to start to settle into what's going on. Now, that doesn't mean tomorrow I'm going to wake up and I'm going to be absolutely fine with all this. It just means that I'm going to start, hopefully, to have more periods of time where I'm managing and I'm okay, right, and then less periods of time when I'm not, rather than the other way around. Because we're going to be up and down with all of this, because it's a changing thing. Every day something different is being released. Yeah. I mean, what I would say, that I did notice when I've travelled to Pakistan, is people like a lot of news. Yeah. And I would strongly advise, and I have to continuously advise myself the same thing, we're the same in that regard, not to be watching quite so much news. Because if you have a tendency or a propensity to spiraling in your thinking, to a gloomy place, the news is going to escalate that. True. So a little bit of news so that you're up to date. So at 5 o'clock here, every night, the Prime Minister comes, or one of his team, because of course he's now got COVID-19, one of his team comes and gives a press conference, and that, for me, I like that. So in the morning, when I've walked the dog and I've got my breakfast, I have half an hour just checking in what's been happening. If I can't stop myself, I'll have half an hour at lunchtime. If I can stop myself, then I will watch again at 5 o'clock and see what the press releases and see what's been happening around the world. Because the news is constant and there's nothing else in it. There's nothing else in the news. That's all there is. You'd be forgiven for thinking that there is nothing else going on in the world, and there's lots of things going on in the world. So, in answer to the question asked, it's, we have to change little aspects of our behaviour to help us through this. So, if you've always watched lots of news, wean yourself off slowly, because it's not going to help. It's just not going to help. If you're online all the time, it's not going to help. If you're using being online to cope with the monotony of not being able to go about your business, then do physical things online. Things like this, having a conversation, an exercise app, a meditation app. There are honestly, imagine if during wartime people had access to all this stuff. But then make sure that you spend some time in an outside space. If you're fortunate enough to have a garden, walk around the garden. I did a podcast with my friend Nikki yesterday, which I've just released today, and she says, walk barefoot in the garden. You know, remind yourself that you're part of life and earth, and get grounded. When you're in front of this thing the whole time, this becomes the world, and it's not going to help people. You have to mix it up. People have to mix it up.
So this is a very important thing, and we just got a comment on that as well. Because in Pakistan, news is basically what entertainment is to the other countries. So if you are eating food here, right, if you are having dinner, the TV would be, playing in background. It would be on, and the news channel will be on the TV. So rather than having a music channel or a sports channel, or a drama, mostly in most of households, it's the news channel or the entertainment. And that's why we have all kind of shows where we are putting one politician against other, and they are abusing, and they're accusing of each other. So that has unfortunately become more of an entertainment here. And this is where the comment is also coming from. So in since we have a history of doing that, so now news channels are the only thing that we watch, and we want to quote unquote stay updated about it, because half of the day we get solutions on our WhatsApp that in some far flung country, a homeopath doctor, allopath doctor has found a cure with a garlic bread, for instance. So the half of the day is spent on basic fake news, and then comes the TV. So there's a lot of panic. There's a lot of quote unquote updates, and that creates panic for our elders at times, and then they want us to panic as well. So the question, what we also is how to manage someone else's anxiety when you're hardly managing your own.
Turn off the TV.
But that's the point. It's, for example, it's my father watching the TV, and he's going to watch it because he wants to stay updated. But I don't want to be part of that. But he wants me to know what's happening and then
Yeah.
panic with him.
So that's about a boundary, isn't it?
Yeah.
What you've just described to me is about, so who's in control of your boundaries?
Uh,
Who is it?
that's the other person.
It's you.
Yeah, in this, for right now, it's the other person, but it should be me.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly. So the TV's on, you ask nicely, could we have a little bit of time without the news on, please? Then that person says, no, I want to watch the news. And you say, but please, I'm really struggling to have so much news, it's not helping me. And that person says, I don't care, I'm watching the news, I've watched the news for years, get over it. And you say, okay, in that case, I'm going to leave the room for an hour, and I will come back, and then we can have a conversation then. And you leave the room. That is your boundary. If people do not set boundaries, then people will implode. Environments that weren't toxic will become toxic. People have to take some personal responsibility to set some boundaries. And here's the thing, this is an opportunity. Actually, no one wanted an opportunity that comes that kills people. Nobody wanted the opportunity to come in the form of a virus, but it is nonetheless an opportunity for change. It's an opportunity to do things differently. So everyone's always watched the news. Well, nobody has ever had 3 months at home.
Yeah.
To focus on themselves, to focus on their family, to focus on their creativity, their work, their thoughts. When has anyone ever had an opportunity to do that?
True.
It's a gift. So we have to make decisions that are not harmful to others, that are actually about saying, how am I going to use this opportunity? And one of those things might be, I am not going to watch the news all the time. And I'm going to put a boundary, a small boundary, because I know that boundaries is a big thing. So you might have to start with baby steps. I'm going to put a small boundary around this, because that's very, very difficult. If you are unable to have that protection from the news because another human being thinks that you should sit and watch it all the time, that's very difficult. I respect that person's view to want to watch the news all the time. I respect that. But then I have to have some of that back too, which is that I can't watch it all the time because it leaves me feeling really gloomy.
True.
And I don't want to be gloomy. I want to look after you because you are my father or you are my mother. And I want to be as happy as I can be so that I can make sure that you're well and healthy.
Right. I totally agree with that. Talking about my personal experience, that's what I've been doing. My father watches news a lot all day, but every now and then I sit with him, I talk to him, we eat our meals together. But then I come back to my room. I either read something or I watch a movie or documentary or play video game, and then I go back, sit with him, give him time, and then come back to my room. So I that's how I manage. I keep take breaks from the news. That is the
Yeah.
only thing about it.
And it's perfect because what you're doing, Hammad, is you're taking responsibility. You're not making your well-being his responsibility. You are taking responsibility. You're thinking about what you need to be able to get through this
Yeah.
because you love your parents and you love the people that you live with. So you need to get through this without going completely bonkers. You
Yeah.
need to get through this without screaming at people that you love. So you have to take personal responsibility to do something about that. And that's what you're doing. So you're setting a fantastic example because what happens next is people watch you and they think, this is interesting.
I
He
know.
goes off for an hour a couple of times a day.
Yeah.
And that seems to be working for him. I might try it. Yeah. So you
I
become then a role model. Yeah.
I really hope so. We have another question. So this is from a friend who recently got married. So it's more like 3 months, I think, and now they are living on their own. So it's just two people. They both work together, so they were used to a routine where they were going out, working all day, coming back, eating together, going out and stuff like that. But now you're confided to a place, uh, and for the first time you're confided to a place 24 hours 7. So my friend was asking basically how to survive that, if that's the right word, if that's the right word. But she was basically asking about what are some of the things that both of them should be doing, and taking some precautionary measures.
Yeah, well, do you know they're going to have an opportunity to actually have some really deep and difficult conversations? Because the thing is, this experience, this opportunity that's coming up for us is going to show us who we are.
True.
And we're all different. So it's going to, whatever's coming up for us is what we have to deal with. So if you're somebody who's got a lot of fear coming up, fear is the thing you're going to have to deal with. In that relationship, you've got that mirror of that other person, and that's going to really hopefully teach them both how to have really deep conversations with each other. And that means walking away when you're raging, which is quite difficult, and then coming back later when you're not raging and saying, I'm wondering if we could have a conversation about what happened earlier, because I don't think I behaved as well as I could have, or I really struggled with the way that we spoke about such and such, or I'd really like to find ways of making this better between us. And having those really deep conversations together that lots of people get away with not having. And actually, during this period, if you're locked down with your relationship, I don't see how you're going to have any choice but to have these really difficult relationships. And think how deep that's going to make your relationship. And again, how that sets an example and a tone. So when you finally have children, watching you have those kind of conversations because you've had some practice, you've got no distractions. Imagine what healing takes place in a situation like that. But that's going to take some practice, because that's, when you're busy, and I've been on the Lahore roundabout. I know how busy that roundabout is. I know how busy. And when you're on that treadmill, it's very easy to not have conversations and to not talk about the important stuff. But it's those conversations that will set you apart in your relationships and set good examples for your children when your children need to see how do you solve difficult things.
Uh, that brings me to another, something that I've been wondering for the last week or so, because this is, as you had rightly said, so that this is the first time in our life that, we are confined to a place and we are not supposed to go anywhere. No one can visit us. Most of us, luckily, are on paid leaves, so it's not like, you have to worry about financial trouble, or we are not in an economic capitalist race as well. So this is probably for the first time a lot of us are actually meeting ourselves.
Mm.
A time where we are spending time with ourselves. Even if you're married, unmarried, you parent, living alone in whatever capacity, but you are getting time where you are getting to know yourself. And I think this is something that scares people. I can talk about myself. It used to scare me a lot. It took a lot of practice and external help to get me to the point where I am comfortable where I am right now with myself. But I think we are afraid of ourselves, and that's where the problem starts. That we are unable to start that dialogue with in ourselves and with ourselves, and our regrets, guilts, mistakes are coming up. So what is your suggestion, or some tips for that, for having a conversation with your own self?
Kindness, compassion. I mean, you put it so beautifully, really, because you're absolutely right. For some people, this may be the first time that they are confronted with themselves. And what an amazing opportunity to develop that relationship, because you'll know from the journey you've been on that the better and the deeper the relationship you have with yourself, the better and the deeper the relationships that you can have interpersonally in your marriage, in your relationships, in your friendships, because you've been to that place where you've had to meet yourself.
Yeah.
And we can only meet someone else as deeply as we've met ourselves. But when that's happening, if that's something that you weren't expecting to happen, and to be honest, most people don't go on that journey with themselves outside of a crisis. People don't generally wake up and go, do you know what, today I'm going to deal with all my stuff. I'm going to pop myself into therapy. We usually deal with our stuff because our back is against the wall and we can't actually deal with ourselves any longer. So we need help. And this is a crisis. It's a global crisis, and there will be lots of people in that crisis who have to deal with their stuff, and that's going to be really difficult. And part of that is going to be about using tools like breathing tools. Learning how to take some really deep, meaningful breaths and have some stillness. They're going to be about finding somewhere to cry in peace. They're going to be about journaling. Writing stuff down is fantastic. I'm a big fan of writing. I think writing, if you feel safe enough and you feel that your writing is protected and you can, because nobody wants that stuff read, do they?
Yeah.
So journaling is so good. Doing art is fantastic. I find painting my way through difficult feelings really, really helpful. When you're doing something creative, you're also having that stillness. So there's an opportunity there. But yeah, I hope if someone's watching this thinking, how am I going to cope? They're writing all this stuff down, because these are the things that will get you through. There's no magic wand, but equally, it's not massively complicated. But the feelings are going to feel intense in that circumstance. And when we can sit with those feelings, again, that is pure growth, pure personal growth.
Yeah, and I hope that when we come out of it, we are able to remember, because I've been discussing with my friends as well. Whenever it ends, hopefully soon, we'll be pulled back into that routine. Our
Yes.
employer, our workforce, everyone will be going back, and we will be trying our best to catch up from the last whatever the months we are going to lose because of this. And then I think we will have no time whatsoever to see that if we came out of this in a positive, in a better manner, or we came out of it much worse situation, and we won't have any time. So probably this is the only time period where we can channel our energy, our focus, so we can come out of it in a better, dignified way, if there is any.
I think that that's so well put. You know, how are we going to use this time? How are we going to come out of it the other end? What do we want the world to look like when we do come out the other end? And I'll just challenge you a little bit on the language you used there, because I think that's really interesting. You know, thinking about it as we're going to have to catch up on the time we've lost. This is not lost time.
Hmm.
This is rich time. This is not about something we want to claw back, to go back to the same as we were. The reason we've been gifted this opportunity is because the way we were was not working. Something has, well, that's my worldview. Okay, it's not going to be everybody's, but from where I'm sitting, that we have three challenges in the world. We have environmental challenge.
Yes.
We have the challenge around division,
Right.
and we have a challenge around connection. What has COVID-19 done so far? The planes are out of the sky. The transport has ceased. The division, there's no news fueling all of that division stuff. That has really taken a back seat because people have to take care of the people around them. And connection, we have time to have those conversations with each other. So we are not going back to something. We are coming out of something, and we have an opportunity to move into something that's very different.
I totally agree with that. You know, whatever unfortunate it is, but when it started, there were people who were trying to spread rumors and creating some divisions on the basis of sects and religion, uh, pointing fingers. But 5 3 4 5 days into the crisis, uh, everyone knew that this is something we are facing together, and if we are going to get out of it, that's the only way. There is no point in who is who, what color, religion, race do you belong to. It's something that is affecting everyone from China to Pakistan to UK to United States. So that is something, it has, I don't know, united the world, and I really hope that we keep it that way. So we have another question.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about the creative endeavors, and that is, my friend is saying that is the only silver lining. And but she is scared for many people, and she has friends asking that how to deal at 3 a.m. So I think we are talking more about the panic attacks, or the anxiety you get late night, when you are alone with your thoughts in your dark room. So some practical tips regarding that.
Okay, well, I'm not immune to waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning. What do I do when I wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning? I make a cup of tea, and I get back into bed
I think
with a cup of tea.
they're talking about the point where they never slept. So from 12 to 3 a.m. they were up thinking, and at the
Yeah,
3 a.m. it's at they're at the lowest point. They're panicking and
yes,
going full anxiety.
yeah.
I think they're talking about that point.
Okay. I mean, there's only a few places you can go to steady. What's happening there is you need to think about, how do I feel safe? Okay, because what's going on with the system, the bodily system, when that's happening, is it cannot find a place of safety.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you're trying to feel safe because you want to go to sleep because it's 12 o'clock and you can't, and your thoughts are going, and I can't find. You're trying to find some safety so that you can settle your system, because when you have a settled system, that's when you feel safe. So for each person, that's about thinking about what helps me to feel safe so that my system can be settled.
Hmm.
Okay. If staying in the thinking brain, staying in that place of worrying and all the noise is not going to disappear in the darkness of night. That's only going to get exacerbated. So what are the different things that you can do? And you need to think about those things not in the dead of night, because in the dead of night, when all of that's going on, you're not in your thinking brain, you're in your surviving brain. So you need to have a think in the daytime at a time when you're feeling relatively calm.
Right.
What is my toolkit going to be that's next to my bed that I will do that will help me feel safe if I'm lying awake, unable to feel safe? And that's going to be different for everybody. So for me, it's a cup of tea. I let myself get up and make a cup of tea. I quite like colouring. I find that very calming and very relaxing. Doesn't disturb anyone. Got some felt tip pens, colouring book. I also like textiles. So I make sure that I have a very soft blanket on the bed that helps me feel very safe and warm and snug. But that's me. Everyone's going to be different, but if you can take the time in a calm moment, what do I need to have? Then when you're in that place, you don't need to think about it. You've got it all there ready, and give that a go. A lot of it's trial and error. Figuring out, it's part of that whole thing of figuring out who you are, you know, getting to know yourself and getting to know what calms you. How do you know when it's coming on? You know, what's going on in your body that's alerting you to the fact that it's coming on? Are you ensuring that you're eating regular meals with space in between so that your digestive system has a chance to digest? Are you making sure that you have some quiet time? You know, it's a series of things to do through the day and eventually through the night, but have your safe pack. Have the thing, maybe it's having a photograph of somebody that's really important to you next to you.
True.
Or because it's Pakistan, maybe having the Quran near you, having something that gives you comfort and safety that helps you feel like you're not alone in this. We are, and what I would really like, sort of finishing from what you were saying about the connectedness, is that we really grasp that we're all in this together. We really are. We really are experiencing this together.
You're right. And I think one of the things that I used to do was I used to write text message to my friends, even if I knew they were sleeping. I just go on and on and on, and just because I knew my friends are not going to judge me next morning on that, rather they'll be able to continue that discussion the next day, and by the time I wake up and we start having a proper conversation, I'll be in a better place as well. So whatever the
Yeah.
dark thoughts, I basically sent it to someone, and then we used to have conversation, or even mock them, or even laugh about them the next day. But that's how it works for different people. Uh,
And
Another.
a really good way, just a quick way of calming you. And it's not going to work for everybody, okay? But calming yourself is you can put your hand on your chest. I don't know if people can see my hand on my chest. And you can have your hand on your belly and just take a breath in, like I did on my self-care one, for the count of 4, hold it for 4, and then have a long, slow release, so that you're kind of going... And maybe do that 3 or 4 times, and you will feel your system calming. I mean, if you're particularly dysregulated, you might need to do that several times. But I would highly recommend that if that happens to anyone who's watching in the night, in for 4, hold for 4, and then just a long, slow release. But comfort yourself with your hand on your chest.
Excellent. That was very helpful. I think that is something that most of us can try, and then we can get to the point where we know that how many times we need to do it, and with practice it will get better. Another important point that I think you really appreciate, and it's kind of amusing because I never thought that this is also happening. But apparently people are also comparing the quality time now, that how you are spending your quarantine. I didn't know that it was a thing. But again, I think it's not about achieving miracles during this time. It's basically we slowing down, staying grounded, and
Yes.
whatever you like.
Yes. And I think the important thing is that people don't medicalize the responses that they're having, that they understand that these are normal feelings for experiences where we feel we're in a community trauma, if you like. And I think that's important because it'd be very easy to catastrophize that and say, I've got mental illness and I'm mentally ill, when actually they're very normal responses to what's going on. I think that's important that we hold that for each other.
Okay, so one last question before we wrap it up. Uh, we have seen that these times are a challenging time for all of us. They are challenging us in different ways. Some people were really focused on work. They thought that their productivity comes from achieving something at their work. I might be a victim of that as well. But at the same time, some people were really going out extrovert. So my point is, there is a set of people who were already going through stuff, who already were experiencing anxiety, stress, depression, OCDs, PTSD. So it is, I think, much more difficult for them because they were already being challenged due to different reasons. So, what is your advice for those people who are already going through stuff, and now this global pandemic has been forced upon all of us? How do you think they should be coping up with that?
I would advise everything that I've said so far. I mean, I couldn't add anything to that. There are some people, I guess, that are really, really going to struggle. And that's about how we hold those people in our communities. That's about taking the personal responsibility for ourselves in the ways that we've spoken about, so that we have enough strength to hold the space for people who are really going to struggle more. Because for some people, not for lots, but for some people who already struggle with life, this is going to be very challenging. But know this, for some of those people, this will be their growth opportunity, and they will come out of this stronger. And we don't know which people they will be, because we all grow and heal and develop and learn in entirely different ways.
Thank you so much, Lisa. If I missed anything or if you want to add anything to our discussion so far, I would love to hear it.
I'm just really grateful for the opportunity. I'm a very big fan of Pakistan. I loved coming to do work over there. I've been to Lahore, to Islamabad, to Karachi. I've worked in the slums and I've worked in the privileged colleges, and it's, I think it would be really difficult to have this conversation without having experienced some of the different things I've experienced when I come over. And I have to mention Safina, who has always brought me over, which has been lovely. And I hope, inshallah, that I get the opportunity to come back again, that one day we have planes in the sky again, but we have a lot less of them, I think.
I
Yes.
really look forward to that day, and I really hope that when we come out of this whole situation, we do remember the lessons and the conversations uh, we had with ourselves and with each other, and take that. This might become the starting point for World 2.0, and we can be nicer to the environment, to ourselves, and I look forward to hosting you in Pakistan soon, inshallah. But thank you so much for your time. It was lovely having you.
Thank you so much. And you're a great gift to everybody to do this for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.